Tip today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing. We are coming to you live from Nina. Coming up on the show this morning, another day of disruption is expected due to the fuel protests. We'll be hearing from both the protesters and those affected by the disruption. Aontú leader Peadar Tóibín will join me just after 10. Cara Darmody was in Leinster House for a meeting with Minister for Disability Emer Higgins. We'll hear about that. And regular contributor to the show, Muiris Walsh, had an interesting experience on the Luas in Dublin recently. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tipfm.com. And as ever, whatever way you might make contact with us, we're always glad to hear from you. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers. The Irish Independent, and their headline is a rather alarming one indeed. Growing alarm about fuel supplies as pumps run dry. Gardaí set to move in today to help ensure access to key fuel terminals blocked by protesters. To the Irish Daily Mail, and the lead story on the Mail today, almost 200,000 highly paid workers are at high risk of being replaced by AI in the coming years, a new report has found. Educated white-collar employees are set to bear the brunt of the transition to artificial intelligence, with up to 1 in 5 positions in the accountancy, telesales and administrative sectors potentially being replaced in the short or medium term. To the Irish Times, and the lead story on the Times today, a wave of Israeli airstrikes across Lebanon threatened a ceasefire between the US and Iran less than a day after the agreement was announced. Also on the Times today, fuel protest organisers have promised another massive nationwide demonstration today after blockades and slow-moving convoys caused significant disruption right around the country, they're telling us. And finally, we go to the Irish Examiner. And again, that story, fears 4 courts could run dry, is the main story there. We're also reading on the Examiner today that a retired Garda superintendent is to stand trial, accused of facilitating a crime gang perverting the course of justice and corruption, while 2 other serving officers face 171 connected charges. That's a look at what's making headlines today. If you'd like to make comment on any of that, once again, text WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, today marks the 3rd day of the fuel crisis protest across the country and across Tipperary as well, with a blockage on the M8 north and southbound in the Cashel area. Councillor John O'Heaney joined the protesters last night, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Fran. Thank you for having me on this morning.
What was the mood around the protesters last night, John, when you were there?
It was actually very positive and very resolute. They are very defiant in what they're doing, and there was a massive crowd presence there for the several hours I was there yesterday evening and into last night. This is a huge issue that's affecting a lot of people right across the county in Tipperary, and I suppose, you know, these protesters don't actually want to be there, but they've been put to the pin of their collar, unfortunately, with the rising fuel costs, and it's made running their business almost impossible. And, you know, we're seeing the effects of it over the last few days, that the protests have escalated right throughout the country, and it's causing a lot of disruption to people. But I suppose, you know, they felt they had to force the government's hand and to seek action. Their businesses were at risk. They've, you know, wages to pay, fuel bills to pay. And as we head into, particularly into the summer season, you know, the agricultural contractors have significant costs occurring, bus contractors, haulage companies, and they just felt this, you know, this was the last straw, that the cost of fuel over the last couple of weeks was unsustainable. So it was a very productive few hours. I'll be back there again this afternoon with the the protesters. I got the opportunity to speak to them yesterday, to outline my support and to listen, I suppose. It was important to actually listen to the concerns of the people that are there on the ground, because that's the problem. They feel that they just haven't been listened to in the last number of weeks. They've raised their concerns over the last couple of months with the cost of fuel going up significantly, and their overheads in their business, and it's just become unsustainable for many businesses throughout County Tipperary at the moment.
What did you hear from them, John, on the response of the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach? Because it was a rather bullish response to them. What were they saying to you about that?
Unfortunately, they feel that the government at the moment, particularly the ministerial section of the government and those in the positions of power, are totally disconnected from the people, the ordinary people on the ground. They were very upset and angry at hearing some of the comments yesterday from Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who more or less called the protest illegal. Was very dismissive of the efforts of the protesters. But, these are the people that elected this government, on the basis that they would represent them in their times of need and in their times of crisis. And I feel yesterday that some of the comments that were made by Micheál Martin were absolutely disgraceful, in my opinion. I was very disappointed, and I wouldn't normally come on your show and use such strong terminology like that, but I was very disappointed at some of his comments yesterday. It does seem that he's totally disconnected from the ordinary people on the ground.
Well, he said the blockade is national sabotage at this point. Was that the kind of comments that you're referring to?
Yes, I just feel that the terminology that he used, that he more or less criminalised the whole thing and was very dismissive of these. As I said, these people don't actually want to be there. They're all losing a lot of money by not being at work this week. They still have wages to pay to their employees on Friday, and this affects small businesses like myself. I'm self-employed, right up to the larger haulage companies in the county that have maybe 60, 70 lorries on the road. It's a huge impact, no matter what your margins are, or how big or small your business is. The fuel has got out of all proportions. The cost has become, it's just a cost that's not bearable in the current climate for many of these businesses locally. And a lot of them in the next month to 6 weeks are going to go to the wall. I was listening to them yesterday, that they're very fearful over the next couple of weeks that, their livelihoods that they've worked so hard for over the last, years and years upon years are going to be gone in the blink of an eye.
What about the constituents you're hearing from, though, John? Are you hearing from people whose lives are being disrupted by this as well? Are you hearing from people who might be trying to make medical appointments and the like, or just simply go to work and they're impeded from doing so? Are you hearing that angle too?
Yes, I am. And I suppose, several people have been in contact with me in the last 2 days, particularly, and again this morning, raising some of their concerns that they do have to get to medical appointments, particularly in Dublin. And they're just fearful that, appointments that they have waited for several months to receive, they're now going to maybe have to reschedule, or they may end up missing them. Now, the protesters, 99% of the protesters in the country have kept the hard shoulders open for emergencies and for people who are looking to attend hospital appointments. But there is a little dissatisfaction also on the ground. But I do think the overriding sentiment of the country at the minute is support for this protest, because, people are looking at this and the cost is gone out of all control. A very interesting point is that for every €2.20 in the diesel, 1.20 has been taken by the government in taxes. And, it would be my opinion that for the next month to 6 weeks, there needs to be a major cap on fuel in the country to allow the haulage companies and to allow the contractors to get back on an even keel and an even footing. And particularly coming into the silage season, I spoke to a lot of agricultural contractors yesterday who are very fearful that they won't be able to complete their duties in the next few weeks. And that'll have a major impact on food on the shelves and the farming sector across the country if the silage can't be saved because of the growing fuel costs. And that has big implications on the farming sector then going forward.
Are you concerned that we could end up in a situation with the Gardaí and indeed the army being brought into this as well? It would be very rarely that would have happened in this country over the years, and it would be very divisive, wouldn't it, to see those images on our streets?
Yes, I was listening to some of the comments there from the Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan, and he's considering all his options as regards to this. That would be a very serious course of action, in my opinion, because I just feel it would completely divide the nation, who are already very divisive and who already feel very attached maybe from the current establishment. And I do feel that, a more productive course of action might be to actually sit down and look at this and talk to these people and look at their margins and see that they are unsustainable currently at the minute. And in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be very telling for a lot of those businesses.
Is diplomacy completely gone out the window? I mean, you know yourself, even at council level, John. I mean, if you want to get something happening, you have to work with other people, and there's a bit of give and take. And most importantly, you have to watch your language. I mean, when you hear the Taoiseach coming out and using language like, a despicable attack on our economy and our society, and the laws of the land must be applied without fear. This kind of, that's only going to inflame an issue, surely.
Absolutely, and it did inflame people yesterday, and people were very, very angry at hearing those comments, myself included. And I suppose I would be very worried, are these the comments from Micheál Martin, or are they comments from senior civil servants, or who is advising him to say such divisive comments and language, in a national broadcast? Because yesterday, an awful lot of people tuned in to listen, to hear the government speak, and to hear that, they were hoping for words of reassurance, and maybe words of diplomacy, and maybe action to be taken as regards, let's sit down and discuss the issues here and seek a resolution that's amicable for all sides. Because yes, at a council level, you do have to work with people, and also at a national level. And in any sector in society, you do have to work with people, and there is give and take. Not everybody is going to be happy with a resolution, but as long as it's an amicable resolution that everyone can agree is for the best of interests of the nation. But yesterday, the comments coming from the government were very divisive, and they were very out of touch with the common people. And it does seem that they are very detached from what's actually happening on the ground. Because this isn't a small protest, Fran. This is a national protest. There's tens of thousands of people out protesting. If this was an isolated incident around the Dublin region, maybe it could be a little bit more dismissed. But to see Whitegate in Cork closed down, one of the largest oil refineries in the country, where 40% of the fuel comes in and out of the nation, to see the ports closed down in Foynes and in Galway, it is a national issue. We've seen the protest here in Tipperary extended this morning down to Care. There's blockades around Care town today, which will cause significant disruption from people coming from Galway to Waterford. It's a major choke point in the country there. So this is not going to get any better, and the government need to realise that they do need to have an air of diplomacy here. They need to bring the parties to the table to seek a resolution. And my own opinion is there needs to be a cap on fuel for the next month to 6 weeks to get our businesses and our haulage companies and our agricultural contractors back on an even keel. I've heard reports this morning that there's petrol stations around the area around West Tipperary and South Tipperary that are already out of fuel. Yeah. So this crisis is going to escalate in the next coming days. If there's going to be no fuel in the forecourts, people won't be able to travel, or transport is going to be majorly affected in the county and the country.
Yeah, just for your own information, one of our listeners on to say, John is wrong. I missed an appointment yesterday. I was stuck in traffic for 4 hours trying to get to Cork and had to turn back. Hard shoulder was all blocked up. I understand the protest and the suffering, but there has to be a balance, especially when it's starting to affect the whole country and petrol stations starting to shut down. People won't be long turning against the protesters if this continues. It's an interesting point, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and I do take everyone's point on board, and there will be elements of people that are quite frustrated with this protest, but those people do need to look at the bigger picture here, and if these haulage companies and these agricultural contractors go to ground in the next few weeks, there will be no food on the shelves and there will be no fuel in the forecourts. So it'll be a much bigger issue than someone missing an appointment.
Well, I take your point, but I mean, if I am somebody that's dealing with cancer, for example, and, an appointment is vital to me and I'm terrified about it anyway, but I want to go ahead and see my consultant, I'm not going to be as concerned, I suppose, about issues of fuel. I want to get to my appointment. It's as simple as that.
Yes, absolutely. Look, this is a crisis situation. It's a national issue. Something like this is unprecedented, and it hasn't happened, in an awful long time in this country. And I do take people's frustrations on board. And it would be remissive of me to dismiss some of these concerns, but this is a major issue in terms of the overall picture in the country, and in terms of healthcare. Yourself, Fran, I've been on to you, several interviews there about my efforts to run buses to Belfast and to seek better healthcare facilities here in the country. But this is a national fuel crisis at the minute, and the concerns of people on the ground are frightening, and the margins and the businesses that could end up going to ground in the next few weeks. This may only be the tip of the iceberg. If this isn't resolved in the coming weeks.
All right, John, thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Councillor John O'Heaney speaking to us there, who was at the protest last night. We'll take a break. Back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today, joined now by Councillor Seamie Morris. Good morning to you, Seamie.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you today. Thank you for your voice note earlier on, and there's a lot in it, but you're making the point that the government is blaming farmers and indeed hauliers at this point, Seamie.
Yeah, Fran, they're talking tough against farmers and agricultural contractors. Ordinary working people that the government have always said that they support us, get up early in the morning, do their work. But without the farmers and without the agricultural contractors, without the bus drivers, this country would crawl to a halt, because if they go out of business, there's no one to transport us around the country, and there's no one to bring the food to our shelves or bring anything into our hospitals to restock our hospitals. But really, when the government are talking tough, they should look at themselves, Fran, because Martin, Jim O'Callaghan, Simon Harris, they've all stood back and not only have watched two genocides. We're into our second genocide now. There's a genocide happening as we speak in Lebanon. They have enabled it because our Shannon Airport is being used by the US military. We're not a neutral country. I don't know where this neutrality came out of. Our airspace is being used for weapons, for Israel to be restocked with weapons. The Irish government had an opportunity to take on Trump when they went over on St. Patrick's Day, but instead they kowtowed to him. They kowtowed to him when he started off in office and started to bully the whole world with tariffs. That was the time to take him on. But also the fact that the EU still has a favourable trading with Israel shows how weak we are, in Europe in particular, but how weak and mealy-mouthed our government ministers are when it comes to dealing with two genocidal tyrants, which is Trump and Netanyahu.
But the real politics, right, two different conversations going on here. Let's stick with Micheál Martin going to the White House with the ball of shamrock. I'm not sure. I mean, to be pragmatic about it, I mean, what would he do? What would he have achieved by taking on Trump at that point? And would it not have damaged the country, Seamie?
Could you imagine Micheál Martin going to Adolf Hitler with a bowl of shamrock? Because literally, that's what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with two tyrants, genocidal tyrants. Fran, what's going on? What has gone on in Gaza? What has gone on in what's going on in Lebanon? My God Almighty, we're witnessing one genocide after another, and yes, we're not speaking against the people that are doing it, but we're taking it out on the people that are going out on the road and protest. The farmers, the agriculture contractors, and the bus drivers that are out on the roads at the moment are out for every one of us, because at the end of the day, if they go out of business, and Fran, they'll go out of business quicker than anything, because the amount of extra money that they're paying for fuel is it's just not sustainable, Fran. But we have to reverse this, Fran. Why is what happening now happening now? Why are we in a fuel crisis? We're in a fuel crisis because that lunatic in America has decided that attacking Iran, that Iran would fold in 24 hours like Venezuela did. That wasn't going to happen, Fran. And now, yesterday, Israel dropped 100 bombs in 10 minutes in a populated area of Beirut. My God Almighty, Fran, who's going to stand up against these people? Thanks be to God, there's a very brave Prime Minister in Spain that has denied the Americans airspace and has also called for the EU to call off the favourable trading we have with Israel. We're tolerating Israel, Fran. We're tolerating the USA. Someone has to shout stop. Someone in time to come. People often say that, when Mr. Hitler got on the road, why did nobody shout stop? And all of a sudden then he had most of Europe taken. And there was millions of people died because of it. That's what we're facing at the moment. I mean, only for Iran having the Strait of Hormuz to use as a negotiating ability to negotiate with the rest of the world, Iran would be plummeted into the ground. And that's what's going on at the moment. And we as a country are facilitating it and enabling it, Frank.
And that's playing into the situation that we're in at the moment. Can I ask, and I put this to John O'Heaney as well there earlier on, I mean, diplomacy is a vital tool to have if you're a politician. You know that at council level. Can you believe the lack of diplomacy that you're hearing in the kind of language we've been hearing from Micheál Martin and Simon Harris? And now we have Jim O'Callaghan wading in, and they're talking about the Gardaí becoming involved in this and the armed forces beginning to... those I can't get over what those images will be like on our streets, Jamie.
Yeah, look, to be honest with you, I was a small bit taken aback with Micheál Martin's comments yesterday, because he's a great man to talk tough. He's been chauffeured around the country, Fran. When was the last time he put petrol or diesel into a car? The reality is people are angry with the wrong people. The people should be supporting the people that are protesting at the moment, because they're protesting for every one of us. As I said, Fran, everything in this country is brought to us by road. Every one of those people out there are trying to make a living. And if they can't make a living, they'll close up shop. And, some of the agricultural contractors, the people that are ploughing our lands, the people that are, doing all the work that enables food production, they have machinery, friend, that's worth up to €250,000 and probably more. They have bank loans out. If all that goes down, Fran, we're in a massive financial crisis. And to be fair to them, they're trying to stand up for themselves. And when I hear someone saying that they have no mandate, this is the type of language that was used when they were talking about the Republican movement, and they ended up negotiating the Republican movement. So my statement to Ryan O'Mara and Mr. Murphy there is, get into government, tell them to step away from the type of language they're using, and talk to the people that are out there protesting at the moment. I know they're talking to the Road Hauliers Association, but they need to talk to these people, because these people were further angered with the language that was used yesterday.
Micheál Martin, what he said I thought was very telling. He said he's following international guidance from organisations such as the ECB and the IMF, which have developed frameworks for managing crises like this. This guidance emphasised targeted temporary measures. Nobody picked up on that. I can't get over that they didn't.
But Fran, that's verbal diarrhea. These people absolutely know how to talk down conversations and try and talk their way out of conversations. Look, at the end of the day, you're going to have to deal with the people that are on the streets in Ireland. It's not, believe you me, governments across Europe are using their own ability to talk to people that are protesting or whatever is going on in the rest of Europe, and it will come to the rest of Europe, Fran. Because to be fair to the French farmers and all the rest of it, we always admire the French farmers, Fran, when they go on strike and when they go and they get negotiations going by going out on the streets. And this is what we're seeing happening here now. It's pure sorry, friend. Most of the people that are out in the streets at the moment are probably losing money by doing it because this is their busy time. They don't want to be on the streets, but at the end of the day, they saw the fuel prices rocketing up over the last number of weeks. And friend, when the Irish government talk about the fact that they're doing what the rest of Europe is doing, remember this, friend. We have a thing called VRT on all our vehicles in this country. It's actually a tariff on all new vehicles being bought. That's not a European. That doesn't happen across Europe. It only happens in Ireland. So when they want to put tariffs on things, they go their own way. But they can't talk to people now because they say the ECB and the IMF are telling them they can't. Of course they can, Fran, and they will talk to them eventually.
Well, I'm sure people were very heartened to know that advice will be delivered soon through education program to help people reduce their energy and to save money as well. So I'm sure that's going to be very helpful to people.
Brian, at the end of the day, they're bringing in new taxes now on fuel, and it's to do. They're telling us we're getting the money back in retrofits and all the rest of it. Fran, someone put out a message yesterday and showed where that money went over the years. We're talking about cycleways that are not being used. We're talking about river walks that are costing hundreds of millions that are not being finished. That's the waste of money that has gone from people from the government taking extra taxes on fuel. Let's do a cost benefit analysis on the money that they're taking off of people in these new taxes and see if they're efficient. And I bet you they're not.
What do you make, just finally, of what appears to be a fact is that, the hauliers and the farmers don't feel that they're properly represented by their organisations, by the farming organisations and by the road hauliers organisations. What does that say to you?
That doesn't surprise me, Fran, because, the IFA and the Irish Road Hauliers Association have let down the people that they're representing in my eyes. They're very, very quick to go in and do deals. I'll give you an example. The pipeline to Dublin. There's farmers the IFA went in and negotiated for farmers literally to give away their own property for minuscule amounts of money. For a project that hasn't got planning permission and hasn't got an abstraction license. That's what the IFA do. They go in and negotiate, come out rubbing their hands and say, look, lads, we got you a deal. But at the end of this, friend, they have wiped out small farmers in this country. The IFA have literally wiped out small farmers. It's nearly all big landowners, big landowners that are left. That's what the IFA have done to people. I was really surprised a couple of weeks ago when the Irish Road Hauliers Association initially said they were going to do something and then they didn't. And I suppose the people out there protesting at the moment have lost faith in the Irish Road Hauliers Association, and that's why they're on the streets now.
All right, Shamie, thanks for coming on with us today. Thank you. Good morning to you. This is Councillor Shamie Morris speaking to us there. 1800 938 007. The text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. A listener disagreeing with Shamie, saying that he's misinformed by disagreeing with Trump and the Iran war. This needed to be done for decades, says one of our listeners. We finally found a strong president to deal with it. If the terrorist regime succeeded in producing nuclear weapons, fuel costs would be the least of our worries at that point. The fuel protesters are 100% right, and the government telling them to stand down is a complete insult. People are being bled dry at the pumps with those in power sitting comfortably, completely detached from reality. Instead of fixing the mess that we've created, they would rather silence, and the people calling them out. It's arrogance, plain and simple, and people are right to be absolutely furious. And that comes in from Michael, who's in Killinall today. 1800 938 007. Now, we gave our TDs an opportunity to come on with us this morning. We've heard back from Seamus Healy so far, and I know Seamus is going to speak to us on the programme tomorrow. A couple of them, I think, are on holiday at the moment, but we'll see what we get back from them over the course of the next few hours.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today. Now going to a regular contributor to the programme, Pat Lynch is with me. Good morning to you, Pat.
Morning, Fran, and to your listeners.
And good to talk to you, Pat. You've been having a look at what's going on, Pat. What about your opinion?
Now, what was disgusting there yesterday was the language that was used, and this was said there earlier on the show. And one of the things they said yesterday, even when the person was on there yesterday morning, they're speaking, the TD ward, he was basically saying that these group hadn't a mandate. They have a mandate from the people of this country that every man, woman and child that are suffering due to these excessive costs, that's the mandate they had, and fair play to them, they stood up to it. And the one thing with this protest, they showed the people of Ireland that when you really push us to our limits, and they are pushed to their limits, we can bring this country to a halt. Now, unfortunately, it caused disruption for people, and this was sad to hear this, because I know in the capital city it's caused major disruption. But what we have to ask here now as well is, what was mentioned even on your show this morning, is the amount of money that the government are taking out of this fuel. Now, what we have to ask and what we have to question here is, where is this money going? Are they spending it on bike sheds? Are they spending it on people coming here? Because we have a cost of 3.28 million daily on the migration thing in this country. We're after spending in 2025, we're after spending 1.2 billion. So what we need to see, and what I want to see now happen today, and it starts today, and Jim O'Callaghan stated there last year, there's 80% of these people coming here that shouldn't be here. I want to see, and this was voted in Europe there lately, I want to see starting today this mass migration cleared up. These 80% taken out of there, and they told when they're leaving this country, don't come back here, we won't be buying any more City West out of taxpayers' money and facilitating you. That all we're doing is destroying this country. Where we have a warehouse out in City West, is all I can call it, of cheap labour, and this cheap labour is being used in sectors of this society that a lot of people don't know. And the reason some of these passports are taken as well is these people, they don't want them ever leaving the country. When we have cheap labour here, we'll take the passport off and we'll use it.
Right.
There's an awful lot going on in this.
This is a subject. That's a subject, Pat, we often talk about on the programme. So if we could just stick to what's happening at present, because it's unprecedented, where is it going to end, do you think?
Where it needs to end, and I think that we don't need to see this disruption, and we don't need to see this hardship, because there's hardship on everyone. There's hardship on the people that are even protesting. They're losing days' work. What we need to see now is a stop to this protest. We have made our point. We've told the government that they no longer represent us. They're no longer listening to the people of Ireland. They're no longer representing the people of Ireland. And the people of Ireland have spoke up and clearly said that. What came up even yesterday, when they blocked Whitegate, 40% of the oil that we're using is coming from Whitegate. And then the government have the neck to tell us that there's no price gouging going on. So they are pushing people to their limits, and people are at their limits now, and they've shown this with the protest. So the protest should end now, and people go back to work. And what we need to see from day one now, from starting from today, these 80% that shouldn't be here leaving the country, and all this money that's going into them, that this migration catastrophe,
that this is put into the daily lives of the people of this country, and the people of this country will not only see in fuel, but will see across the board this money being invested into the people of this country by the politicians that are paying the people that are paying the politicians' wage, that are now going to represent the people of this country. So this waste of money on these people coming from here, and this crowd, they had the guards there last night photographing and whatever. We need to get. They're on about the morale gone down in the guards. The guards know what's going on is wrong as well, and the whole lot. So, like this.
Yeah, well, but in fairness to the Gardaí, I mean, the Justice Minister met with the Garda Commissioner, and therefore the instruction then comes from the Commissioner, and I mean, they're doing what they're told to do. They're sent out to. They
are, but they know that this is wrong, and they know that they are part of. They shouldn't be. Even with the protests that went on in all these migration places, the guards knew that they were told to do a job, and they had no other choice only to do it. So when they talk about the morale going down, this is pushing people to their limits, and this government are using every man, woman and child in this country for their own self-needs, and they're not representing the people of this country. But as I said, from today, get this 80% out of this country, and the money that's been pumped into it, pump it into the daily lives of the people here, and the people won't have to protest and won't have to go on. We're at breaking point in this country, and I could see this coming, and I hinted on your show at times what's going on, and I hinted that I wasn't happy with the way this country is going. I can see all this. I can see this getting to breaking point. It has now got to it, and we need to start standing up, and we need to start taking back our country, and we need to end all this humiliation that these politicians are doing to the people of this country, because that's all they done yesterday. They called us everything. When we were talking about migration, we were this, that and the other, we were far right, we were whatever. The people of this country saw this country being flooded, and the people of this country sat and watched this going on. What's wrong with the people of this country? We're too quiet. We allow this to go on, but this is at breaking point now, and every man, woman and child is affected with this carry on.
All right.
So this needs to stop.
I must leave it there, Pat, but thanks for coming on with me today. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Pat Lynch with us this morning, 1800 938 007. Now, yesterday on the programme, I spoke to Haulier Michael Mackey, and we're going back to the protest in Cashel where Michael is there. Good morning to you again, Michael.
Brian, how are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thanks for coming on with us, Michael. A little bit of a delay on the line. You made your way to Dublin, I believe, yesterday as well, Michael, did you?
I did. I was in Dublin last night, John. Correct.
Yeah, so you were there.
Stopped off in Portlaoise first.
Okay.
A couple of lads in there.
Tell me about your experience in Dublin last night. You were there when the crowd was addressed, were you?
No, I wasn't there. I'll tell you what it was now. I was in Dublin last night. I had a small bit of business to do, so I just made it my business to meet a few of the guys that we were on the WhatsApp with. Like I said, yesterday we were kind of, everyone is doing their own thing in their own area. So it was just nice to touch base with someone that we've been, colluding with there for the last couple of days. And just to feel the form, just go up and see what the story was and what their plans were. Just kind of, read the room, as the fella says. So we got good rapport last night anyway, and the lads are up for it. Like it's not slowing down, friend. No.
And what was the reaction to some of what the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach said? Because some very strong language being used. There seems to be alarm as the protests escalate, Michael, with the Taoiseach describing the blockade of the refinery in Cork, for example, as national sabotage at this stage. So some very strong language being used.
Right, well, yesterday we were listening here on the M8, and when he came out and said that, well, he was just on about, they met the representing groups of the constitutionally called, right? Representing groups. Now, this is Theory's own words, the constitutional group. So, like, he's saying that these people represent X, Y, and Z, right? And he's not getting the picture that it isn't just about X, Y, and Z. There's a lot more to it. There's a bigger landscape than just trucks and farmers. It's like a chain. It's like the food chain. You have the top and you have the bottom. And he's not worried about the normal Joe Soap. He's not worried about the person that's sick. He's not worried about the older person that can't afford heat and oil. He's not worried about the working person and the business person, which that has lads employed and stuff, you know. So he's talking about, you know, dealing with registered companies, but he's left the rest of us out. That's fine. The IRHA have their own setup and whatever else, but it's just the ordinary lay folk. He's not tuned in. Like, he's actually not tuned in. You know, so he's on about democracy. He said it was wrong. He's only to quote a few words now. He said it was wrong. So it's wrong that the people. That the people of Ireland have an issue, and they want to express it.
Simon Harris, the Taoiseach, said that the blocking of fuel distribution, for example, a despicable attack on our economy and our society, and the law of the land must be applied without fear. That's the big danger now, is that we're going to see conflict with the Gardaí and possibly with the Army as well, Michael. Have you fears around that?
Double standards by Mr. Harris. We're all well aware, and I don't like to mention this, but we're all well aware of young Harvey, that young chap that died with scoliosis. Where was as you said yesterday, the mandate? Where was the outcry? Where was the looking after these sick kids? Where, like, does he have to be in a registered organisation to be looked after? He just sat there and watched that after making promises on national television, in media. He made promises that he'd do that. Like he's on about sabotage. They're sabotaging us from within. They're making the ordinary Joe so mad. The support for your friend last night again, across the board, it's phenomenal. Support in Dublin, Laois, these places, it's phenomenal. These guys are just deluded. There's talks now of Jim O'Callaghan, the defence forces they're supposedly being sent out.
Yes.
To try and sort this kind of thing. But when you think of a friend, like, if you're a couple of years older than me, like you remember all the Stalin, and you probably learned it all in school as well, the Hitler stuff and all that kind of stuff. That's what this is mirroring now. The Irish people have an issue, have a problem. But they're making it down to, as you said, mandate. They're making it down to a couple of words on a page that they're trying to avoid. They're shoving it to one side because of this. Instead of Micheál Martin growing a pair, he's the leader of the country. He's voted in. There's a constitution which he is to abide by. Now, we know he won't, because he done it with the Dundrum House Hotel with the iPass, with the High Court injunction. He went against that. Enoch Burke went to jail over breaking a High Court order. Micheál Martin had just went in, Micheál Martin and his cronies went against a High Court order that Dundrum was supposed to be closed down, that it was illegal what was happening out there. So he seems to be the law of the land at the minute. The courts here, which are, again, here to provide protection for the country, he seems to be able to overrule these guys. There's no judge now shouting at him, but you know as the saying goes, don't bite the hand that feeds you, and that's what's wrong here in this country.
Right.
I mentioned O'Callaghan there a minute ago about the Army. I'm just going to say something about them, and if the Army boys are listening, and don't get me wrong, when I was a child, I wanted to be in the Army. I thought it was amazing to be in the Army. But these guys, when the Queen came to Ireland, were sitting in Phoenix Park, were sitting in ditches, eating out of curry trays, cold sausages, cold beans, getting paid €2 an hour, $1.50 an hour. These are the same guys now that they're sending out now to come down and pull and push and terrorise and tear this place apart. We've seen all the videos on social media. And now, to a man, I'm not knocking them, but I would say, if they are listening, think about what you're doing, because this is not. It's not constitutionally. It's not right. And them using the word sabotage and them using the words trying to collude again, like I said, the government put smoke and mirrors trying to make us out to be the bad guys here. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people in protest. There's tens of thousands of people are backing us on social media. We all can't be wrong, friend.
But have you any worries, Michael, that, you know, I mean, if people find they can't put petrol and diesel in their cars at any cost because the refineries are being blocked, if people are finding, as we hear from from some of our listeners this morning, they can't make medical appointments that are vital. Have you a fear that you might become divided in some way and that the public might turn against the protesters?
Yeah, medical appointments, friend, that's the greatest scam ever. The HSE, as I said to you yesterday, we could talk about these things. The HSE is on its knees. We've support from nurses, doctors. The ambulance service there. I met a couple of them. They put on the blue lights for us. They give us the thumbs up. Like medical appointments, this country is a shambles when it comes to our health. It's an absolute shambles, and the government want to drive us all down to private. Take money out of our pockets, send us down to private health route, right? Which is in theory is a great idea. But then what happens then is if we all do that, then the private health board or private health system will be overloaded as well, and they won't be able to manage. It's the mismanagement of in this country is an issue. Like I said, the army had their issues with the government. Right, the girls have had their issues with the government, with Harris that time. The 98% of them wanted them out. But the government still went with Harris. This country is gone. It's the people at the top are gone. I'm not going to say woke, but it seems the minority now wins in this country rather than majority. The election was a prime example. Been a falling Fine Gael in bed together, and they cut the legs out from each other for the last 100 years. Now, I'm probably getting sidetracked a little bit, but all I'm saying to you is, right.
It's interesting, Mike. I was watching some of the footage where there were speakers outside of the GPO on O'Connell Street yesterday. It seemed to me as well that there wasn't much love lost for opposition speakers either. Is that the way? Is it a plague on all your houses kind of at this point, is it?
But see, again, like I said about the Dáil lads getting brainwashed, once you're in that group, they say opposition, right? And I know guys in Sinn Féin, and the old Sinn Féin, I would have admired that because they had an agenda to look out for the country. But at the minute, the new Sinn Féin, look, I'm not going to go down that road, right? But what I'm saying to you is, once these guys are in there, opposition or not, they're all quite happy to sit around and sing Ring a Rosie around the garden. They're all quite happy to do that. They're all friends. You might see a shouting match on the telly there for 5 minutes, and the Count Cola, who was an ex-chairperson of the IRHA, sitting in there now. So they're all linked. Everything is linked here. This you're talking about Goodfellas, you're talking about movies and television with the mafia. This is a mafia, a live day mafia in front of us all. And I'm not naming names. I texted a few councillors yesterday, disappointed that they haven't been here. They have every excuse in the book. Michael Lowry came down to us last night. Michael Lowry, again, he's propping the government. I said that to him here. I wasn't holding back on him. Lads are getting hot and heavy with him because they're frustrated. See, but like,
what did he say? What did he say? What did Michael Lowry say to you, Michael?
Well, he more or less just said that what Micheál Martin said and Chambers and these guys that we need to be a registered organisation and blah blah. Again, did they move the goalpost? They're constantly moving the goalpost on Irish folk, Irish citizens, right? If it suits them, they'll do it. They'll do what they want. You know this kind of way. But they do, like I said, they're so up in the clouds. They're not on the ground. They're not here. They're just not listening to Irish people. And Michael just said we need to get a proper organisation. As what he said was, we're the small guy at the minute. We're the small guy. They're not going to listen to us. They don't want to know us. They'd rather send out the army now, because the army are probably above in the barracks the last couple of months. Don't know what to do. They're in out of the rain. They don't know what's happening. So now it's time to, all right, now boys, earn your money. Come out here now and start getting stuck into Irish citizens. And this is what it's about. Listen to News Talk yesterday. Foreign nationals that are working in this country are actually on our side. I thought myself that they'd be given out. Now, there was a couple of guys there giving out, oh, you blocked this, you blocked that. Realistically, there's no one really being blocked. You're being detoured. You get up a little bit earlier, do your few bits. Like I said, down here, we're letting people off. But this is what the government are doing to the Irish people now. Not truckers, not tractor drivers, not contractors. They're doing this to the Irish people. I have to get that across to the people that are listening.
Yeah.
We need help. We need people up here. I don't care if you're not working. It'll affect you, because you still have to buy your heating oil. You still have to, if you have a car, still put your few bob in it. We need everybody on the streets, and we've had flags out. We've had a good bit now of people helping us out and stuff. So we just need more people to come out now and show. And again, right, as a protest, but this is about the people of Ireland. It's as simple as that.
And finally, Michael, can I ask you, I mean, is this going to go on into the next few days, do you think, into next week?
It's going to go on as long as we're not heard. And like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm Colonel Gaddafi on the phone threatening that. That's not the case. The case is people are so frustrated and so mad and so angry, and the government need to do something. And if Micheál Martin had a brain, he's an educated man, he's a school teacher. He came up through the channels, he came up through college and schools, and he's obviously well educated, but he's just not in touch with the common folk, and he needs to have a sit down, even if it's his wife, even if I could get this message across to someone in his family. Just tell him, just be a man. Forget about the president, or the Taoiseach, forget about all the power that he holds. Just be a man, sit down and talk about it. Because this is affecting, maybe not his immediate family, but it's affecting the rest of them. They won't say that. This is affecting everyone that voted him in down there. Like, this is the bit that gets me. Like, we need to stand up to this. He's in there to do a job for us. We are paying his way. The mismanagement of him and Harris and the rest of them over the last few years. Well, look, we could go back a long way. But the mismanagement of our money, like, just to throw a few figures at you, there's 2.35 billion, I checked it out here, Rhonda, before you rang, of between foreign aid and what they call aid to all these other. There's 130 countries Ireland are sending money to in small ways, right? We obviously know about Gaza. We obviously know about Palestine. There's the World Bank with Pascal Donoghue. They let 10 million extra go to him, and then he gets a job 6 months later. Surely that's a conflict of interest. Surely that's a breach of some law, business law, or some constitutional law. Like, he gets a job there 6 months later. It's giving 10 million extra.
All right, Michael.
This is wrong. And I
Sure.
would
Yeah.
I would say to you, Fran, and I look, like I said, I'm a nobody. I would say to you that Micheál Martin especially, is not fit for the job that he's in. And I would look for him to resign. If any man can send an army out to his own people, I can understand Donald Trump doing it. The man is nuts. But Micheál Martin sending the Irish army out to his own people, there wouldn't be oil refineries blocked. There wouldn't be factories closing down. There wouldn't be shortage of petrol and diesel in the filling station if he was to man up and sit down with the lads. And he knows who they are.
All right, Michael, I must leave it there because I'm heading towards news. But Michael, thanks for your time this morning. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, man.
Good morning to you. And that's Michael Mackey speaking to us from the protest on the MA just outside of Cashel. News and information is coming up.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tipp Today. Now, as Pat was telling you there, the Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan, has confirmed that it's well established in law that the Defence Forces may assist on Garda Síochána in aid to the civil power when requested and when required. He said the blocking of critical national infrastructure will not be permitted to continue, and the assistance of the Defence Forces has been requested. Large vehicles blocking critical infrastructure will be removed. Owners of these vehicles should remove them immediately and should not complain later about any damage caused to the vehicles during removal. He said denying people access to fuel and clean water is an unacceptable interference in the most basic of human rights. Now, right throughout the morning, we've been hearing from those protesting in the Cashel area. I'm glad to be joined now by Aontú leader Peadar Tóibín. Good morning to you, Peadar.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to come on.
Well, thanks very much indeed for coming on with us today. You addressed the protest in Dublin yesterday. I saw some of the footage of that. There was a lot of anger. Even you had some hecklers yourself, Peadar.
Well, first of all, I would say that the majority of the people in this country, I believe, are suffering significantly from this cost of fuel crisis. So last year, the government took in 4.3 billion euros in taxes and fuel. In carbon taxes, they took in 1.2 billion euros in taxes. And every time we go to the pumps, about 60 to 65% of the cost of that litre is actually government taxes. So it costs more in government taxes than it costs to, drill for that oil, to pump it up above the ground, through the sea, into the North Sea, onto a ship, into a factory, to have it refined, to bring it to Ireland, to sell it at a forecourt. The government are taking more in taxes than the whole supply chain for the production of oil in this country. And that's unfair. It's wrong. And it's having the effect, I believe, especially on people who are dependent on petrol and diesel and home heating oil, of creating poverty for them. In these specific businesses, it's pushing those businesses against the wall. It's basically meaning that these businesses are going to have to close after a while. At that protest, I think there was a very fair kind of reflection of regional and rural Ireland. You had bus drivers, you had farmers, you had contractors, you had recovery people, you had builders. A lot of the people who we depend upon to get our food, to get our children back and forth to school, and to help us out in terms of difficulty to build our homes. And they're the people that are suffering the most, and they're the people who I believe are at the protest currently. Now, I do think that there is a solution to this. We don't want to see the roads blocked, I'll be honest with you. We want to see the country reopened. The solution to this is for the government to pick up the phone and speak to the representatives of these organisations. And they themselves have said, if they get a phone call from a government with a promised meeting with them, they will call it off and the roads will be clear within an hour. And I just think it's really pig-headed of the government at this stage to still refuse to talk to these individuals. Now, they said that they're not going to talk to them, they said, because they're not a representative organisation or they're not a registered organisation with a clear structure of leadership. But the point is, they're citizens. They're the people who pay the wages of the ministers. And we live in a representative democracy, so all citizens should have access to speak to their politicians about the issues that are of concern to them. And I just think it's incredibly, thick-headed of the government to refuse to meet with these people, at least, and try through the avenue of peaceful discourse to resolve this issue.
Do you find it interesting that the farmers involved in this protest and the hauliers involved in this protest and others don't feel properly represented by their own organisations? These are the organisations that the government seem only willing to speak to.
Yeah, listen, the farmers are a very diverse group. There's a lot of farmers out there at the moment who are, who are doing well. About 30% of farmers are making a profit currently off the farming sector. But there's equally about 30% of farmers who are making a loss currently. And the middle 30% of farmers, they reckon, are only making a living because someone is actually working off the farm. Someone has actually got a second job somewhere. So while these representative groups, out there do a good job in representing a sector of their area, they can't represent everybody because there's so many different experiences in those areas. I do think that the government, there is a kind of an instinct to a certain extent that if you want to work with the government, you have to play the government's game to a certain extent. And we saw how badly the IFA were treated in terms of trying to get a change at the top of the chair of the board, of Board BIA. So, it takes enormous pressure and stress on an organisation just to get very, very simple reforms there. And that's why I suppose there's a growing number of people who are frustrated with the system and who are out protesting over the last few days.
I found it interesting, though, because you'd wonder what or who informs the government as to what tack to take, but particularly in this instance. But it was interesting that the Taoiseach said, Peadar, that he's following international guidance from organisations such as the ECB and the IMF, which have developed frameworks for managing crises like this. He said this guidance emphasised targeted temporary measures. So that's who he's looking to for his approach to this.
But like, if we look at the so-called targeted temporary measures, okay, so people are paying up to $2.20 currently for diesel at the moment, and the price of diesel in Spain is €1.77. The price of diesel in the north of Ireland is below €2. So we have a specific set of circumstances in this country. We are enormously taxed on the issue of fuel. Now, there's a fundamental philosophy behind taxation, and that is people should be taxed on ability to pay. And we have what's called progressive taxes for the last 200 years. And that means the more you earn, typically the more you pay. But the government have decided to tax fuel specifically, and at a rate that now people can't pay. This is not a luxury good. This is not something that people can decide whether or not they're going to purchase. For many people, they are dependent on this fuel for their way of life. This is a staple good. And the government have introduced taxes over the last while, especially in carbon tax, that are so high, people simply can't afford that product. And if your livelihood is dependent on that product to function, and you can't afford it anymore, well, of course, you're going to get into a situation where you're going to seek to peacefully push back, to negotiate with the government. And that's the real frustration of this. Now, the governments, remember, are taxing carbon to get people out of cars, to get people to stop using fossil fuels, to get people to use alternatives. And that's a worthy objective, okay? But the point is that many of these people can't use alternatives to diesel. So a farmer can't spread slurry with an electric car. He can't go out and plant in his field with an electric car. He can't bring in the silage with an electric car. That farmer has no option but to put marked gas oil into that tractor. And that's nearly doubled in price over the last while. And, now a farmer has to sell maybe 5 litres of milk to pay for a litre of green diesel, while 3 months ago he only had to sell 2 litres of milk to pay for his green diesel. So something has to give here. And logically speaking, I can't understand why Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Independents are so obtuse in relation to this, that they're so blind to the needs of the people. Logically, in this crisis, and we in Aontú have been saying, delete the carbon tax, axe the carbon tax during this crisis. The rebate that was given to licensed hauliers a couple of weeks ago, extend that to all diesel-based businesses in the country. And HVO, which is hydrated vegetable oil, which is basically a diesel alternative, and it's actually a carbon-free diesel alternative, that should be included in the rebate scheme as well. There's many steps that the government could take to alleviate the pressure that's on people, but they're refusing to take it. And you mentioned earlier there that the government brought out a package, a targeted package, etc. So the government did provide some money for fuel allowances for low-income families, and we welcome that. But right now in Ireland, you have what's called the trapped middle. These are people who are considered by the government to be too rich to actually gain government supports, but they're actually too poor now to put home heating oil into their family home, or put diesel into their bus or their truck. So there's a whole section of that squeezed middle who are trapped now in this situation where they get no support but still can't afford to be able to pay for these staple goods. And, the government gave 230 million, they said, there in cuts in the fuel taxes recently. But the fact is, they're going to increase carbon taxes in a couple of weeks' time, which is incredible in an energy crisis. And even the cuts that they brought in, they made more from increased VAT on increased prices in that time than they actually gave back to the people as well. So the government are immune from the suffering and hurt of these businesses and these families. And we just can't understand. Like, the latest news today is that the government are going to bring in the army. And, are we going to watch kind of a Trumpian type situation where we're going to have protesters being corralled by an army force in the next while? It's just, and all because the government won't lift the phone and speak to 3 people about organising a meeting.
Can I ask you about something else before I let you go? Because we've heard that the Department of Justice is moving forward with a plan to exempt 7 large international protection accommodation centres from planning laws. Now, I understand your party is going to introduce a bill to counter this in some fashion.
Yeah, so we looked at this a while ago. So planning permission, even though a lot of us don't like planning permission at times, but planning permission is a system which means that any development must consider the local community's needs, the resources in the local community, proper planning in terms of transport, in terms of sewerage, in terms of water, in terms of electricity, in terms of traffic. So the whole idea of planning is to make sure that any development sits and fits properly into a local community. Now, a number of years ago, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the independent governments got rid of planning for IPAS centres. This is absolutely wrong, I believe. And, we have this really strange situation now where they're looking to build 6 or 7 super IPAS centres across the country. And that they are going now, the government say, to have a derogation from planning. So the planning won't affect them at all. Now, about 2 weeks ago in my own town here, we had a family home that was floored, that was completely demolished because it did not conform to planning. Now, the idea of demolishing a home in a housing crisis is just bananas. But the government's excuse in this was planning law is sacrosanct. We have to fulfill planning law, and nobody is above the law. And yet here we have a situation where they're saying the opposite. They're saying, actually, we're above the law when it comes to planning. Planning does not affect us, and we won't adhere to it. And so, that shows a deep hypocrisy, a real problem for people in this area. And we do believe that planning should be implemented on all developments. So we aim to have a bill. It's currently in the Bill's office in Leinster House. We hope to be able to introduce it soon, which, if passed, would mean that the government would not get away with this derogation.
But what about the reality of the issue, which is that we have these people in the country, Peadar, we have to accommodate them, we're obliged to accommodate them in some fashion. If it is left up to local communities, naturally enough, they're going to have issues around accommodating large numbers of people, and they're going to say no. So is the government not between a rock and a hard place on that?
Well, we aim to believe the solution to this is very simple. First of all, the government's asylum process has been very lax, very soft touch over the last number of years. We want a far stricter asylum process. We want to have compassion within it. We want to be able to help those who are actually fleeing war and violence, for sure. But a large number of people are coming into the country using the asylum process, and they're not fleeing war and violence. And that can be seen by the fact that actually the figures of those who are failing have radically increased in recent times. Up to 70 to 80% of people applying for asylum are failing the first application currently. So first of all, if we have a far stricter asylum process, we know that numbers are going to fall. The other element here is that the government is still taking far too long to process people who applied. So there are many thousands of individuals who are, 16 months, 2 years in the process for their application. So these are people who have applied, maybe failed, they've appealed, maybe failed, they've looked to get a judicial review in relation to that, and it's going on years. So we want that process to be delivered in its entirety within 12 weeks. And if that happens, it would very, very quickly drop the number of people who are in IPAS centres. And there would be no need for any new IPAS centres to be opened up in the country.
Peadar Tóibín, thank you for your time this morning, and good morning to you. That's Aontú leader Peadar Tóibín. 083 311 3311. Leanne is with me. Morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Fran.
You are inundated out there this morning, aren't you?
God, I can't keep up with the phones, so if I missed anyone, I will get back to you. Don't worry.
What are you hearing from people, Leanne?
It's very 50-50, which is surprising because a lot of the people who've came on air are on one side and are involved in the protest, but we're getting a lot of messages and calls by people who are actually against it. They're either against the way it's gone about, or they're very worried about appointments, holidays, visiting elderly family. A lot of people would fly up and down the motorway because, especially in the north of the county here, to get to Limerick you fly up the motorway, to get to Dublin you fly up the motorway then as well. So a lot of people are actually very concerned. Prices are coming up hugely. Mary from Bursley got in touch and said that she saw a box of Cocoa Pops on sale for €8.
What?
€8 for a box of Cocoa Pops. So there's a lot of people genuinely afraid that it's not just going to stop at the fuel, that they're noticing strawberries are now €6 or €7 punnet. Everything is going up slowly, and there's a lot of focus on the fuel when there's a lot of other issues.
All right. Did I see somebody make contact with us and say that fuel is being limited in some of the forecourts, the amount of fuel you can buy? Is that?
Yeah, we've heard a few reports of that, and there's a lot of people genuinely worried about what's going to come next. It's like, where does it end? Is this going to go on for weeks? Are we going into effectively another lockdown? Is that what's going to happen here? And another big worry is there seems to be a lot of people on the internet trying to promote that this is the start of a united Ireland. So a lot of people are getting a little bit, not even that they don't necessarily support it, but just a little bit afraid that some people might use this opportunity to kind of instill maybe violence and anger. So a lot of people are genuinely concerned what we're going to see in the next few weeks.
Right. It's going to be very interesting to see what the government's reaction is going to be now at this point. But that idea, just from some of what I'm reading here, Leanne, the idea of putting the army out to help the Gardaí is probably going to polarise things even more so, is it?
What we've heard so far is that how the government have dealt with it, our listeners think was wrong.
Okay.
From the Taoiseach statement yesterday, 2 pictures online of guards meeting for policing policy and trying to figure out what to do, and now this decision, because they see it as, it's obviously an uncomfortable situation as well for the soldiers and guards involved, because these could be people from their community, people they know. And another big thing which I found quite interesting was that idea that this, in the 70s and 80s, would there have been a different attitude towards this? A lot of people look back on that time very fondly when students all over Ireland protested, even the banana protests in the shops that at the time over apartheid. So that idea that now people just don't seem to have the energy in them, and there seems to be a lot of backlash and a lot of anger when they do stand up.
All right, interesting. We'll let you get back to chatting to people, Leanne. If you want to talk to Leanne, there may be some delay on this because so many people are trying to get in touch with us, but it is 1800 938 007 and it is a free phone number. We'll take a break. We're back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, last week, disability rights activist Tipperary's Cara Darmody went to Leinster House for a meeting with the Minister for Disability, Emer Higgins, and Cara joins me now. Good morning to you, Cara.
Good morning, Sean. How are you today?
I'm very well indeed, and lovely to hear from you again, Cara. You went in there thinking that there was 20,000 children on a waiting list, but you got a bit of a shock. It's worse than that.
Unfortunately, I did, yeah. She actually confirmed that the waiting list had gone over 22,000, which is, when you think about it, they were saying that, I was saying that it's a national disgrace last May at my 50-hour protest when there was 15,000 people on that waiting list, and it was seen as, an emergency. And now it's gone up to over 22,000. When you think about it, that's more. So it's kind of what point is it going to get to where they're going to see that they're going to have to do something about it? Because even I got 20 million euros worth from Cara's fund at the budget last October, and that was enough to help 6,000 children. But when you think about it, since May, it's gone up by over 7,000. So when you think about it, the waiting lists are moving up rapidly, and something needs to be seriously done about it, and that's what I was saying to her last week. But to answer your question, yeah, I got quite a bit of a shock, when she said that it was actually over 22,000.
What did the minister say to you? Did she give you the usual list of stuff, or had she anything creative to tell you?
She was really, really nice now, I will admit that, but she was kind of just, the way the government is, that they move at what I call a snail's pace, and it's they go on about all these little things that they're doing, but ultimately that they haven't done the big, like, as I was saying to Bernard Gloucester a few months ago, that the big national recruitment campaign, that they haven't done that. And she said that she'd meet me again in 6 weeks' time, and then she would let me know as to whether, like, the recruitment campaign was successful or not. But, like, I was even saying to her that, like, if they fill, because there's loads of vacant positions right now in the HSE, that even if they fill, like, loads of the vacant positions and, like, get extra therapists and do everything right, like, the system was never built to deal with 22,000 kids rotting on a waiting list, like.
But I mean, last year you spoke to the Taoiseach about it. You spoke about the recruitment issue. Why did she tell you why this hasn't been dealt with at this point?
I suppose, Fran, it kind of goes back to what I said, that, like, the government go very slowly on these issues, and, like, you see, there's so many other issues right now, from, like, those protests, which actually makes me feel kind of half bad today for being on here, since that's dominating the news. And it's like the government, like, there's so little priorities on disability, because ultimately it's like people will kind of focus on what I think affects them. And it's like, as someone who lives with two brothers with disability, it's very, very hard at, like, at home even to, like, study for my exams, or, like, even, like, sleep at night. Like, it can be really, really hard. And it's like the government, a lot of them don't understand what it's kind of like to go through that, and there's just a simple lack of urgency there. But that urgency needs to be seriously shown, because every one of those 22,000 kids, there's no plan in place for them, and they're just rotting on a waiting list because they can't stand up for themselves.
But Cara, do they view it as an emergency?
No, Fran, and unfortunately that's why I've been campaigning since I was 11 years old, because I've noticed that there's a problem. And they all say that I'm 100% right, and they all agree with me, but it's doing something about it tends to be the problem. And, like, the title, like, the head statement of my article in the Nationalist newspaper this week is on page 34, if anyone wants to read it. It's "The Assessment of Needs Crisis is a National Disgrace," and that ultimately sums it up.
Now, from here on in, then, I know that you're going to ask Michael Murphy, or you have asked him, in fact, to organise other meetings for you. Who would you like to meet at this point?
Well, actually, we're meeting him this Saturday, and I'm going to ask him to meet people such as, like, let me see here, like Ministers Hildegarde Naughton and Jennifer Carroll McNeil, to continue advocating for people with disabilities and those who can't stand up for themselves. And it's like, I think that something just needs to be seriously done about this. And, like, I've always said, Fran, that, like, I'm going to go into retirement, and I'm just going to, you know, go away, go back, focus on my junior cert, but I'm not going to say anything here because I don't have a lot of plans. But what I will say is, if I do have any plans, you'll be the first one to know about it, because, as you know me, I often say I'll go into retirement and then I come out with another stunt, but maybe just not anything too crazy.
Well, we always look forward to what it is you're doing. Since I spoke to you last, you've had some more highlights in your young life, because you were MC for the National Young Carers Conference in UCD, and that was a long day for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was absolutely amazing, because I got to be, like, Ireland's youngest MC of the National Carers Conference, and it was honestly such an incredible experience, because even, like, I got to introduce the president to the stage, Catherine Connolly, and it was so amazing to even watch all the young people speak about, like, self-harm stories and, like, what it's like to be a carer. And then some people had really inspiring stories, and it's like, just to be the person on the stage, like, kind of watching everyone perform, and then also speak to the crowd myself, like, it was really, like, an amazing experience, you know. And, like, it was like, it went on for, like, around 6 hours, and I can honestly say it was the fastest 6 hours of my life. Like, it was just amazing.
And what about the president? I know you met her husband as well. What was that experience like?
It was absolutely amazing. It was so funny even sitting with them, because I got to sit at the same table as them, and they had all these great jokes and stories. And I might actually tell you one here, because Tipp FM definitely deserves to know all the amazing stories. So I think the best story was probably when Brian was saying that he had to go to hospital a few weeks ago, and, like, obviously the doctors didn't know who he was, but they were they were looking at him a little bit funny because when he went into the hospital, he had to like give his details, and when they were like checking out his details, then they saw that his address said Oris on Usteron, and then all the nurses and the doctors were looking at him like really strangely because like why was his address Oris on Usteron, and then obviously they knew then that he was like the president's like husband. But I just found that really funny because like he was just kind of going into the hospital like a normal person with a normal life, and then his address is Oris on Usteron, like, you know what I mean? I found that really, really funny. And that's one of many stories.
Yeah.
But I also got to talk to her. Catherine Conley also told me funny stories from like her campaign, and then she was also just talking about like she was just like not even anything in general, but she was just so kind and like funny, and they're very humble people, and it was so nice to get to meet them at the carers conference, and then also for the afternoon tea, which by the way my dad drank about 15 cups of tea that day, so he was all teed out after it.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you had such a wonderful experience there. I presume you are finding some time to study for the junior cycle exams at the moment, Cara, are you?
Oh God, I say I'm in Dublin way more than I'm studying, but yeah, I suppose it's going to be a busy 2 months because my junior cert's in 2 months' time, but I'll be finished before the middle of June, so I suppose it's not too bad. At least it's not the leaving cert, you know? But I am trying to get a bit of study done, but it is hard because I couldn't even take the Easter off because I've had to do study like almost every single day because we get given like these study plans, and like you might as well just do it, like, because when you get given the study plan it will kind of just hang over you if you don't do it, you know what I mean?
Well, we're well aware of your discipline where study is concerned, so I'm sure you will do tremendously well. You're putting me to shame as well as the couch potato that I am, because you're out running. You're doing 10k at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Clonmel lately and I'm quite enjoying the running right now. I think you should go on a run with me. I think that could be really fun, and we could like debrief all of the gossip, you know?
Yeah, well, I'd be so breathless. There'd be very little gossip from me, I can tell you. Cara, it's a pleasure as always. Congrats on all the great work, and we'll keep following your story. Thanks, Cara.
Thanks so much, Fran. Have the best day.
Thank you too. Thank you. Bye-bye to you now. That is Cara Darmody speaking to us there. 1800 938 007. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, I did give an opportunity to government representatives to come on with us. Deputy Michael Murphy is away at the moment. He will talk to us on Monday, he tells us. We haven't heard back from Deputy Ryan O'Mara, and we haven't heard from Deputy Lowry either. Seamus Healy has made himself available to us. I think he's going to chat to us tomorrow, as far as I know. I know that Matty is unwell at the moment, but he is coming on with us, and we're just sorting out a time where that is concerned. Now, let's go back to the phone lines and to Jack. Good morning to you, Jack.
Good morning, Brian. How are you, Jeff? I'm
well, and good to talk to you today. You were protesting outside of Cashel yesterday. I know that you're from Clonmel. You have a background in the haulage industry and indeed in farming as well, Jack.
I do. Look, I just wanted to come on air and talk about the problems we have now going around. Just because, like, outside Cashel there, we held our ground, in other words, there. Like, we didn't want to hold anyone from getting to places like emergency services, but still, we weren't going to just leave it all go. Like, we want to be heard, and we're not going to stop till we are heard.
And what do you make of what you heard from the government, particularly yesterday and I suppose this morning as well to some degree? They're sort of bullish about how they're reacting to this and some very strong language used. How did you feel about that, Jack?
I think it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, I was here listening to it, and then they're saying, Martin, talking about not stopping, he won't listen, or whatever he's saying about, he wants us to stop before he does anything. Something needs to be done about it, and it needs to be done ASAP. Like, you're talking about, a few months ago, you were talking about 250 hours, just an ordinary tractor you're talking about, whatever. Closer to about 350, 400, 450. And then for the trucks, you're talking easily well over 1,000 short to fill the tank, like. And it's not even about just the lorries, the farming industry, haulage industry. You're talking about smaller companies. You're talking about contractors, small contractors, construction owners, people that don't have enough money to fill up their diesel in lorries, tractors, cars, diggers, whatever you need, really. And it's going to put people out of jobs that they need to feed family, put food on the table, where people will go eventually, where there won't be enough jobs on the road.
And, that feeling of discontent that's out there, do you think that the government just doesn't get that to some degree, Jack? Is that it?
Like, they don't really think as much as people. They're thinking from their chairs. They would want to go out, see where it comes from, see where everyone's coming from, see where we're coming from. Go out, do a day of haulage, see where they are, see how it is from the ground. Instead of looking over it and go and do it from where we're coming from small companies to big companies. You can't afford the diesel prices now and all the fuel prices.
Where is this going to end, Jack, do you think? What's going to happen?
Well, what I think, Fran, is going to happen is it's just going to lead to one thing or another. If they don't do something about it, what's going to happen is there won't be as much haulage, farm industries, and it will cost them even more than even to import food if that's what they have to do, if there's no one there in Ireland to do it.
All right, Jack, good to talk to you today, and thank you for making time for me this morning as well. Thank you for that. 083 311 3311. The free phone number, if you want to speak to Leanne, is 1800 938 007. Let's go to Deputy Matty McGrath. Good morning to you, Matty.
Morning, friend.
And thanks very much indeed for coming on with us today, Matty. What are you making of the situation at this point, particularly with what we've been hearing from Micheál Martin and Taoiseach Simon Harris?
Well, Micheál Martin and Simon Harris have just proven that they're totally, completely out of touch with the feelings of people in Ireland, and indeed rural Ireland especially, but all of Ireland, because, this affects everybody. And, the oil crisis, he talks about national sabotage, he called it yesterday, but the sabotage that was carried on under his government, which I fought vigorously with Minister Ryan, and stopping the oil exploration off of Ballyroe, where we were told just up to 30 billion in work of oil there, plus much more probably, but that's a minimum. And they had agreed to fill the pipe with concrete. I call that ready-made concrete. I call that national sabotage at the time. Now, I don't know if it was ever carried out, but they were intent on doing it. But that's national sabotage. Something that happened 5 or 6 years ago. So we've gone on then from that to this. And literally everything with support, Micheál Martin would support any cause anywhere in the world once it's not in Ireland. And I don't know if he wants to be president of the European Union or whatever he wants. He will be for 6 months now, coming up. And I don't know what's that going to cost, how that's going to be policed, and the effect it's going to have on rural Ireland. But the protesters, I was in Cashel yesterday on the motorway when that news came forward from that press conference. I had been in touch today before with Minister Kenny a number of times, and he had told me they were having a meeting yesterday morning. He expected something to be done, but he couldn't say it. But nothing was done. All came out of the press conference was absolute and utter arrogance, and crappies lie down. And this is not good enough. They're totally out of touch. Look, the way the country has been run in the last number of years, the waste, the children's hospital, the iPad centres, the billions that went into that, the whole situation regarding the modular homes. Indeed, 3 of them were on the way yesterday through Ullingford, and they were stopped. And like people said, they're hardly the home Irish people anyway, but this is the feeling that's out there now. So he turned the people against them. We now have a standoff to talk about the army and put the army in that situation, and the Garda Síochána are totally understretched. Nothing can be done now with the Gardaí only manning the roadblocks, and the cooperation has been good, in 95% of it in cash, certainly with the Garda Síochána, and I thank them for that. And they're all people affected as well. So we're all affected by this. So the problem is to see that the so-called social partnership. Social partnership has become anti-social partnership for, I'd say, half the country at this stage. You have the government and you have the trade unions, you have the IFA, you have the IRHA, the Irish Road Haulage Association, and other organisations that are recognised by the government. They're literally in bed with them. They get sucked in, they get sweets and little payoffs and little things. And the things that they won't talk to this wide-ranging group of people, bus people, lorries, small van people, ordinary motorists, and people trying to get to work, and ordinary PAYE workers. They're sick and tired of this. Since the USC went on, the Universal Social Charge, temporary, left on them. The carbon tax in, which I bitterly opposed and fought and called a vote on it in the convention centre, only got 11 to support me. Every party, Sinn Féin, wanted more at the time. And that tax was going to be coming in, not even in any budget for the next 10 years to 2030. It was going to be passed, incrementally passed on to the householders, to the home heating, to everybody. And it was they won't even contemplate withholding that 5% plus VAT that's going to come on now on the 1st of May. The thought of that alone, school children could see that that's an anathema to people at this point in time in a crisis that we're in. Other countries in Europe, you can buy oil for 160, you can buy oil for 140. They talk about, we also have the VRT. We're one of the only countries in Europe who have VRT. So they tell us we can't do this, that, or the other because of Europe. They told us we couldn't have 3 rates of VAT for nearly 4 or 5 years before we found them out. And of course we could have 5 rates if necessary, but they tell us this, you see. I know of situations where they tell us we can't get a derogation for this or that from Europe. They don't even look for it. So they've become cosy in the social partnership. Back in power, they coalesced for all Fine Gael now with independence. I voted for them, and I said it's the biggest mistake I made, but we're all allowed to make mistakes. I thought we might get something for it, but it made them more arrogant, the two main parties. So we had no opposition then.
And what do you make, Matty, of Micheál Martin saying that he's following international guidance from organisations like the ECB, the IMF, and he said they've developed frameworks for managing crises like this?
I'm glad he said this because I have suspected that. Indeed, I put that to him and Taoiseach Varadkar and the Dáil that he was working for the IMF and the ECB, and they were parts of different outfits. How right they were, the World Health Organization. He's elected by the people of Ireland, purely under the Constitution, to serve the people of Ireland, not to serve these masters. He's serving them for the last number of years. We know that. That's quite, a blind man could see this. So now he's admitted it. I think it's an outrage to suggest that, and it's an outrage to come out just literally with a gallon of petrol and throw it on a fire because of what he said. The anger and the people that arrived at the protest in the M8 and all over, I'm told, but was huge after that. They were incensed. And can I say in fairness to the Gardaí and to the protesters in Castle, they allowed, I was involved myself with a couple of them, anyone going to hospital or going elsewhere, they were allowed through, you see, and the hard shoulder was kept open all the time and dignified. These are all people that don't want to be there, need to be at work, want to be at work, and it costs them a lot of money to be there, have those vehicles.
Have you fear, though, Matty, at this point, that people might be turning against each other? I mean, particularly if the petrol and diesel dries up at the pumps, for example, if people can't get to work and can't get to medical appointments whatsoever, that, it will be a divided public we have out there.
The people should go back and see what happened to Barry Rowe. When we had people, and I met them, when we couldn't meet them in the house, we had to meet them off-site because they were accused of being lobbyists. They were lobbyists, fine, but they had oil reserves that we have off our coast down in East Cork, and it could be brought ashore. And we actually, the government actually agreed with Emer Madden to pour ready-mix concrete into those pipes, and that's the vandalism, I called it, and national sabotage, nothing else. And now they're calling ordinary workers who are, a lot of them now, and ordinary contractors, a lot of small business people have literally thrown in the towel because they've nothing left to lose. They can't keep going. They can't pay their bills, and they can't get paid for the work they do because people don't have it. And these are the people that we need to build the houses, to move. Everything has to move on trucks here. And it's fine I'm disappointed with the IRHA because I have been very supportive of them over the years not to get involved here because look, we have to, there's lots of people that are not affiliated to any unions or any organisation like the IFA. The IFA have long since passed their uselessness, in my opinion, because I put it to them for decades about the conglomerations buying up land and everything else. And Jamie Mann is 100% right. How dare they go off and sign an agreement with Irish Water and sign people up for the pipe when it doesn't even have planning permission, it doesn't even have an extraction licence, and it's a project of folly and will break the children's hospital. And they go off because they probably get a payback out of it. And not anybody personally, but the organisation. This is disgusting kind of behaviour, and this is the kind of behaviour the social partnership has led to this. It's an anti-social partnership now that's not looking after the ordinary man and woman get up in the morning to go to work.
I'm just about out of time, Matty. So where is it going to end, Matty? What's going to happen?
Well, talks have to end everything. Look at what's happening abroad in the most heinous war, out in the Middle East, and now they're trying to have talks. Simple, it costs nothing to sit down around the table and talk. 4 representatives have been put forward, and I'm asking and called on the government, and I have called Mr. Kenny to meet with those 4 representatives. Okay, they'll say they don't represent everybody, but they represent the vast majority of them, and they do represent the feeling that's out there of helplessness that the government aren't looking after our Irish people. They're not. I mean, I sat down with all those partners in a year and a half ago, and John Melt told me that the modular homes would cost a maximum, tops of everything, 200,000. Now they're going to 500,000. How is that allowed that a company could do that kind of gouging in prices and we stand by and let it happen? And that company built 11 sites all over the country. You do the maths. Across the country it's rip off Ireland, but the ordinary people are being ripped off the whole time. And we need to talk, and engagement is the only way forward, and not threatening the army. We haven't an army to to help in a gorse fire or a forest fire. Not to mind anything else. So I hope shifting some of those equipments, and I hope it doesn't come to that. I want talks, I want engagement, and maybe so-called get space, breathing space, then get the ports and places open if they're meaningful engagement.
All right, I must leave it there. But Maddie, thanks very much. I know you're a little under the weather, and we wish you well. Thanks for coming on with us today. That's Deputy Matty McGrath. News and information is on the way.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. Getting a huge amount of text and WhatsApp and phone calls, indeed, about the protest. Funnily enough, time and time again, though, we're hearing from people who are just concerned. They're not making any big statements. They're just concerned about the issue of medical appointments and the like. And one listener saying to us, the government's carbon tax has VAT added to it as well as the tax itself. You couldn't make it up. Well, that's true, because my understanding of the way that works is that VAT, for example, is applied to the overall amount, which is on the basic energy costs and indeed the carbon tax as well. So well spotted on that. A regular contributor to Tip Today over many years, broadcaster Muiris Walsh joins me now. Good morning to you, Muiris.
Morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you today. You had a very interesting experience on the Luas in Dublin recently. Will you tell us about it, Muiris?
Yeah, I was in Dublin, obviously, and I got on a packed Luas, and it was, for me, there was standing room only, which was no issue. And I caught the eye of a young lad. I don't want to put an age on him, because this is the moral of the story. But he caught my eye, I should say, and he said, gestured, "Do you want my seat?" With the suggestion that I was quite an elderly man, as I was called by one of the local papers last year. And I said, no, you're okay. And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, no, I'm fine. And I sounded like I can laugh at these things. There was kind of three things to it. I suppose the first thing was that he thought I'm 58. Let's put it out there. I'm 59 this October. Okay, full disclosure. The second thing, of course, was the kindness of him. That still exists, that he would do that he felt, whatever way, that he offered up his seat to me. And I suppose the third thing was the reaction of some people when I told him that story. I thought, oh my God, that's terrible. And I kind of said, I kind of laughed at it, but it just got me thinking about the whole attitude to aging and how we as human beings, what we think about getting old, because we all are getting old. Well, I feel you can get older, but you don't have to get old. That's my thinking of it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one, about it being a number as such. Now, God knows 58 isn't old, Muiris, but do you feel 58? Because I don't feel my age, I have to say. I do when I'm creaking and getting in and out of the car. But do you know what I mean? I don't feel I am the number.
No, I don't, Fran. I don't. I mean, I know I can be a bit flippant about things at times, but I genuinely don't. Obviously, it's well known that I've had health issues, and certainly I felt old and older, and felt very mortal at those times of crisis. And I mean, on three occasions, my wife thought, I was just checking with my wife last night, I was mistaken for her father. So I obviously have a well-worn look about me, but I don't feel my age. Yes. I don't, Fran. I mean, obviously there's situations that I wouldn't go into anymore at 58 that I would have gone into when I was 28 or 18. But that's just a natural process, but I still dance around the kitchen to certain types of music. I'll still, I'll still have that kind of youthful enthusiasm. I suppose I have that old Clint Eastwood line, don't let the old man in. And that's the way I would look at things. And I do look at, there is that whole thing about ageism, and particularly we'll say, I think it's gone a bit too far. I mean, I think there's certain things that somebody at 58 can't do, just physiologically cannot do, that they were once able to do 30 years ago. And the other thing about that is, I mean, when someone says to me that was, 30 years ago, I think in 1978 or 1973. I don't think that was 1993. But I don't think about my age. I've never thought about it. I genuinely haven't. And I look at my birthday as it's just another day in the year, and it's just another. And I suppose the only time I would have thought about it was my mum died at 44. She'd be 50 years dead in May, and that was very, very young. And I understood at a young age, at 8, that you didn't have to be old to get sick, and that was a very, very tough life lesson to learn, but an important one. And you didn't have to be old to die. And so that has stood to me in the sense that that willingness to keep going. And I understand that any of us have no idea when we're going to check out of here. None of us are getting out alive. But I suppose my attitude has always been, you could be dead tomorrow, but you've got to anticipate you won't be, and you've got to try and plan that you won't be.
But then you have a situation where you might be young at heart, and so but then that guy, that young lad, in his kindness offered you the seat, and that it's stuff like that kind of bursts our bubble. We're confronted with reality, I suppose, Muiris. Yeah,
we are. I mean, because of my various illnesses, I have free travel, and I don't want to get into that now. That's Let's just park that. No, I don't want to get into the whole health thing. Yeah. But it does burst your bubble. But when, I obviously look at, I obviously, to some people, I look a bit older than I actually am. And maybe to other people, it's very nice when somebody says to you, God, you don't look you don't look your age, or but it does burst your bubble. But you've got to accept that. I mean, I think what was that great? Just thinking of that great Coco Chanel line when she said, "Oh yeah, you earn your face at 50." And I think that's very true. And I'd rather have a face, Fran. I'll be very honest with you. I mean, I'd rather see my face aging, rather than look in the shaving mirror and see a face that doesn't belong to somebody. And by that, it's just trying to chase youth by getting. I mean, I'm not judging anybody that gets Botox or fillers or facelifts or anything like that, or gets the turkey teeth. Or, I mean, I'm as bald as an egg. So I don't. I mean, I once had the long hair. I was that heavy metal dude, but that's since passed. And there's an acceptance there. But I don't. I mean, my father had that absolutely wonderful appetite for life. Yeah. Huge appetite for life. And I'm glad I have that with him. And I mean, I always feel that, there's a couple of things. I mean, there's never a bad time to listen to John Prine, for example, right? And you want to be around for that next great album. I know John departed 6 years ago this week, and I'm listening back to some of his music, and it's timeless. I mean, Jackson Browne wrote These Days at 19. You might not necessarily know what he was writing about, but it's and you listen to that song, and there's so many versions of it, and it stops you in your tracks. But I mean, I still feel there's great music to be heard. I think there's another great book to be read. There's another great movie to be. There's another great art piece another great art gallery to go to. And that's the way I look at life. And there's another great documentary on the radio. There's another great interview to be heard. And I think once you keep your mind active, and as I say, you don't let the old man in, I think that's the important thing. I mean, there's still a great hurling match to see, or a great soccer match to see, or whatever it may be. And, don't let life get in the way of living. It's difficult at times. Of course it is. It is difficult at times. But, you have to try and do your best with it.
And none of us have a choice as to what era we live in, Muiris. But if you were to have a choice, would you choose where we are now?
Absolutely.
Would you?
I mightn't necessarily choose this week.
Yes.
With all that's going on. Yeah, but sure. I would. I spoke to you about this before. The only other time I reckon I would, the only other time I would probably pick would be the 60s, the late 60s, the early 70s.
That would be from a music point of view, I guess, would it? Or
absolutely, and the whole Woodstock thing, and that kind of free love, and I think the music that came out of the Vietnam War. It was a war that produced many great musicians, and protest songs and all that. And I would have liked to be kind of part of that whole kind of youth protest group at the time, be it in France or the students protesting in America against the Vietnam War. It seemed very exciting and exhilarating, But I wouldn't change it. I mean, I have a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful children. Okay, I've had my health issues, but if you say why me, it's why not. I'm very blessed that I'm and I mean that sincerely. I have some sort of, and you know what, Fran, my daughter has had her first year, nearly finished her first year in college, and she's really come out of herself. She's really blossomed in that, and I like the idea that my son who's 21 and my daughter who's 19, that they have a few radical thoughts, not overly radical, but that they have a few kind of, and they should have at 19 and 21. You know what I mean? They should have a few mad thoughts.
They should have, but are we not missing that? I mean, the great student protests, as you pointed out, of the 60s and the 70s, where students were very politically aware. They were, needless to say, largely left-wing and liberal and wanted to live life. And is that gone? I don't see anything of that anymore.
No, I think it is gone. I think what we're describing is gone, because I think people sat around in flats and they sat around talking about issues. They read. They read books. They weren't on their phones. They weren't on TikToks. And this isn't me being an old fella now. It really isn't. But trying to make sense of the world, or with
a backdrop of amazing music as well, of course, as you pointed out.
Absolutely,
yes,
yeah, absolutely, and kind of listening to that great album. That maybe I got the money to buy that album, so we listened to that album this week, and then Fran came in He said, "Oh, my brother's after giving me a loan of this album." We sat around, we listened to it, and I mean, there was a certain amount of innocence to it. I mean, you know, I lived in Cork for a good number of years, and I had no television, you know, and I didn't miss it, but I had my record player, you know, and that was, you know, I had my cassette player, and I remember, you know, it was always music in my house, and that was very important, and that freedom of thought is a great thing. It's an absolutely wonderful thing. To have a broad mind, to be able to sit down and judge things from a different perspective. And you only learn that by getting into I don't mean deep, but into kind of sensible conversations and you know, having a couple of, we'll say, mad thoughts or whatever. And I mean, even if it was as innocent as you know, listening to Harvest and having a bit of incense going, you know, and you thought you were really cool, you know. Yeah, and if that's what it was, that's what it was. And I think we have lost that. And I think that, you know, if this was this was 40 years ago, I mean, we'd be all out in the streets protesting against the war in Iran. A certain amount of us would, without getting into the politics of that. There would be that. I mean, I went up to Dublin and I protested against the Iraq War in 2003.
Yeah.
And I felt it was the right thing to do. I felt I was duty bound to do it. I wasn't going to stop it, but I felt I was duty bound to do it. And so I think that sort of freedom of expression is kind of lost, believe it or not, because we're more reliant on Twitter to give our opinion.
Of course, yeah. And the journalists that emerged from that youth as well, of course, were top notch, weren't they? You know, they were the great.
Yeah, I mean, Woodward and Bernstein and Walter Cronkite and people like that, and even here in Ireland, the great Dick Walsh of the Irish Times, and Kevin O'Kelly, you know, who went to jail because he wouldn't reveal his sources when he did an interview.
And even the likes of Eamon McCann, I suppose, over the years.
Absolutely, Eamon McCann and I mean Kevin Myers, who divided opinion, but again, you had to read Gene Kerrigan, all those kind of people, and they were fantastic. They were fantastic writers, and I suppose I would just look at my age as I feel that I'd like to think I'm not clever, but I like to think I'm a bit wiser, you know. Yeah. And some of the thoughts and some of the beliefs I would have had when I was 25, I've changed, you know. I've changed those beliefs. Now some of them I still have, and some of them have been reinforced, but I've changed those beliefs.
That's it. But do you fall into the category of we get more conservative as we get older?
I probably do. I suppose that's a very, very genuine, and not patronising France, a very, very genuine and honest question. And I always try and give you an honest answer. I think I probably do, to be quite honest with you. But the other thing too is I've become a little bit less concerned about what people think about me.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. The only thing I always, you know, the one constant in my life is that I try to be kind. And I try to be respectful, you know, and even towards, not just obviously towards people, but respectful towards people's property, but also respectful towards music, to art, to food, not to, you know, diss it, you know what I mean, to listen to it, not to kind of say, well, that's a load of rubbish and not give it a chance, or sort, you know, but I suppose I do become a little bit more conservative, but I think, you know, I felt my father, you know, the older I got, I realised how right my father was, you know, that I didn't think he was as right, as correct, I should say, as he was. When I was 21, I thought my dad was a bit outdated, you know. And I mean, my dad was born the day the Irish Treaty was signed in December 1921. Yeah. So he had all the experience of the First World War and growing up as a child in the early days of the state. And I thought, oh, geez, this is crazy stuff. But that was the era he lived in, you know. And when I listened to his views on things in later life, when I had an adult, a proper adult relationship with him, it's then I realised how wise he had become, you know.
It's fascinating. The whole subject of aging is one, in the last 5 years, particularly with me, it's on my mind all of the time, and particularly contemplating death. Would you believe, Muiris? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, look, it happened to me when I got very ill 13 years ago all of a sudden, and I did contemplate my own death and mortality and what have you. And it was something that as I say, I learned at a young age that it can happen to anyone at any time. And subsequently, I said to you before, I have everything prepared for when I die.
Yeah.
And the reason for that being, it's not for any morbid reason or kind of any sycophantic enjoyment of writing it all down or to pee anyone off. It's just that, the only thing I know that's going to happen when I die for certain, or any of us know, is that the people who love me and who are left behind me will miss me. That's the only thing we're guaranteed. But so with that in mind, being very honest about it, I mean, whenever I do go, I don't intend checking out anytime soon, but, so that people know exactly what's happening. And I don't like that phrase. There's two phrases that I don't like about when people die. Is one, time heals. It doesn't heal anything. Time heals a cut in your knee. But the second thing is that that's what Muiris would have wanted. And I'm kind of saying, are you sure of that now?
Yeah.
Did Fran say that to you when he was alive? Because I'm not quite sure. And so I have everything written down. This is the music. This is this is what I want to do. What now? It's not. It doesn't read like a state funeral now, Fran.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward,
Yes. But it's what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, I said to you like that. There's kind of, you get two pieces of music in the crematorium, and Wichita Lineman and May You Never. Now, people who know me very well might be surprised at that there isn't a Sin Lizzy or a Rory Gallagher or a John Prine or a Neil Young or a Joni Mitchell or a Dylan track and that, but you can't have people there all day listening to this. The
soundtrack of your life,
Yeah, but there's a reason for those two pieces of music that my family know. I mean, Wichita Lineman is my favourite song of all time, and May You Never is my wife and I song. That's our song. That's John Martin. We both love John Martin. But I think that, and that's just a kind of a sort of a practical way of doing things. And but I don't, to go back to the original thing, I mean, last year we had that whole, an elderly man pens a letter, and I thought it was really funny, but it was the contrast of people who contacted me to say, you want to get on to the Nationalist about that. And look, the lads in the Nationalist are all great friends of mine, Eamon Wynne and Eamon Lacey and the lads, and I didn't find that one bit offensive. I didn't find it offensive.
Well, you got a laugh out of it, in fact, didn't you? Yeah.
You have, and I mean, people said to me, sure, you're not even 60 yet, you're not even, that's midlife, and that old Barry Cryer line, you say that, but I don't know too many 120-year-olds. So, but at the same time, I don't lie in bed. When I open my eyes in the morning, I don't lie. The first thing I turn on is BBC Radio 4, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see what's going on in the world. But I don't lie in bed. If I don't feel well, I don't feel well. But I don't lie in bed thinking that I have leukemia or I have this cognitive disorder. I really don't, Fran. I get up and I try and do as much as I can. And I try and approach it as best I can. And when some people say to you, well, you've got to live your life as if it's your last day. But that's fine. But you turn on the radio, and in my world, just in my little world, if I turn on the radio this morning and on the sports news it said John McGrath will miss the Cork match, well, that's my day ruined, right? Yeah. Okay, as trivial as that is, you know what I'm saying to you? Like, John McGrath has an injury and so he's ruled out the Tipp Cork hurling match on the 19th of April. Now, that's very kind of trivial, but that's the way I approach my life, because that's very important to me. But but that's just the way it is. And you talk about eras. I mean, there's so much out there to do and listen to and read, as I say. And again, that's in my world. That's my world. Yeah, right. And I would say to people, like, as I said, there's never a bad time to listen to a John Prine album or listen to, or to get into Rory Gallagher, or when someone, I always kind of flip little phrases when they say Rory Gallagher's top priority was a great album. I said, no, it's not. It is a great album.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Muiris, a pleasure. Do look after yourself, and thanks for this morning.
I will, of course, Brian. It's great talking to you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
That's a great Muiris Walsh there. Let me take a break. Back with more.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And welcome back to Tip Today. One of our listeners says the music was so good. This is following on from my conversation with Muiris Walsh. The reason the music was so good in the 1960s is because you were all off your heads. This is one of our listeners. You could well be right about that. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been inundated with listeners struggling with costs of living, feeling depressed around that, under a little bit of pressure. But what about communities staying positive at times like this? Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by a gentleman who's been contributing to Tip Today over many years indeed. Derek Russell from Rossgrey joins me. Good morning to you, Derek.
Morning, Frank. Good morning to all your listeners.
And it's great to see you today. Over the past 10 or 11 years, you're dealing with people who are struggling, I suppose, Derek. Is that fair to say?
It would be, yeah. I suppose my getting more and more involved with people stemmed out of my involvement with Rossgrey Stands Up, and we started up in 2014. And at that time we would have started up because, like most towns, we had a drugs problem and it got a little bit out of control, and we were having deaths and different things around the town, and it was putting a gloom around the town. And we had public meetings, and the first public meeting we had, we'd hoped to get 30 at it, and I think 790 odd turned up to it, and the next Sunday we went up to 1,300, and there was a lot of focus on the town, and some people said, maybe that wasn't the best thing either, but something had to be done to stop a stem that was there at the time. And we got different services in and whatever, and that was all very good, and the town benefited a little bit, and there was more guard activity, and then, like everything else, as time went on, some of the services evaporated away, and it was left to the original group that was there. And I suppose a lot of ours at the time was being involved trying to help people with drugs issues and whatever, but there was other things there as well. We discovered that there was people in the town, and while they were living in a town with 5,000 and 6,000 people living in between the hinterland and the town itself, there was people actually lonely and felt dislocated from one end of the town to the other. And we set about trying to get people more frequented with one another through different activities, and it became known around the town, that we would help people out, talking to people that were lonely and whatever. And since that, I kept that thing going myself, and at the moment there are 44 people that would either call up to me for a chat once a week or once a fortnight, and that can range from, as I said, loneliness to drugs problems, to anxiety, depression. And I can talk about depression because I have depression myself, and I know what that's like. And I know what it feels like for people to turn around and say, oh, come on, we'll go for 4 or 5 pints and everything will be grand. And for any of the listeners out there who would have depression, know that's actually the worst thing to do, because the next day you feel twice as bad. And there's people out there then that, like myself, didn't know what was wrong with them. And, I just describe it to people, depression, that for any of us that would take a drink, and if you had too many, you'd have that hangover feeling with it, and you'd have very little enthusiasm about you and lack of energy, and to give your best, to go to work and do the few bits that you'd have to do without talking to people, but that's the whole secret. If we can all go back to maybe where we were 30, 40, 50 years ago, that, people just rambled into others' houses, they didn't even knock on the door. If we could get back to that kind of an environment that we were in back then, Now, if you go see someone, you nearly feel you have to make an appointment with your friends and whatever. And like talking to people with like-minded issues, a lot of people would like that atmosphere back again. And, we all know the pub scene has changed a lot in Ireland as well. And I'm not saying that the pub scene was the answer to everything, but people in country areas knew that if they went down to the pub, well, there might be a bachelor or whatever, but if they went down, to be somebody down there to talk to anyway.
It was a social outlet, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you saved lives over the years?
Without a doubt, I have. And out of all this, I've been at more weddings and christenings and 21sts, and I tend not to help people if I can that are under 16, due to the fact that I'm just an ordinary person. I have no qualifications or anything like that. I refer to as having a chat. I don't say counselling or anything like that. And, I'd have a person there that comes there and he's in his 70s and he has family and that, but there'll be stuff that went on in his life years ago and he feels he can't talk about it to his family.
Yeah.
And sure, if I can fill that gap, that's what I'm there for.
I think you're coming at it, though, from a unique perspective, Derek, because you have depression yourself. I think it's only people who are depressed can understand that feeling. Everybody else equates it with having a bad day or feeling a bit down or something. Depression is quite different to all of that, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's like, if any of us lose a loved one and you might never have depression or anything like that, well, it's only natural that you'd be grieving for some people it's a couple of days, some people a couple of months, some people it's for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
And it's to differentiate between that and having your depression. Like for me, I get a pain in the back of my neck and I know I'm going to have a few bad days of depression, but I don't actually have a pain in my neck. It's just that I have the physical symptoms of it.
Yes, yeah.
And for others, it could be sore knee or whatever. And all I say to people is learn and understand it. It's like if you have a problem with your stomach or your foot or whatever. Yeah. If we learned a little bit more and maybe try less medication as well.
What angle do you come at it from? Is it a case that others are to blame for the situation that I'm in, or do you need people to look inward to find answers? Is that?
Well, I'm lucky that I have two friends and they know that if I ring them up, I'm not ringing them up to see what the weather is or anything. They know I'm down. They know how to talk to me. They know me, they know me well enough over 15 years now. And it's vice versa. And I'm lucky that the two friends I have, one of them is from a farming background and the other is from a very high-powered job up in Dublin. But it goes to show that the farmer can have depression and the man and the woman in the high-powered job can have it. There's none of us immune to it. And, I find it very easy to talk to people and most people find it easy to talk to me and to come up to the house and we just sit down, we chat, and if the night is cold or it's winter, we put on the fire and we talk away and they go home a little bit happier than they can most of the time. And that's the way, and to me, anyone can do it.
Yes.
And it'd make life so much better for a lot of people out there. Husbands and wives come together, they, how would you say, that have lots to talk about, but they can only talk about the bullet point. They can't get down and start talking about the depth of whatever's going on in their lives. And that can happen to us all, and when I hit me a few bad days, I'm lucky, I suppose I work during the night and nobody really knows the difference whether I'm in good form or bad form because I don't see too many people going around during the night. So, that's what I do. And
Derek, to people listening to us this morning that might feel that, that's me that they're talking about. I have this melancholy about me and something that I can't always control. What would your advice be?
Well, I come at it from another angle who I'm blessed that I have a son that's very understanding and he's only 14, but he'd have the understanding of a 20 to 30-year-old about depression and mental health. And in school, they have a class, and I can never think of the name of it, but basically can talk about whatever they want in it, and he talks about mental health in it like he was an adult, and they've been talking to his teachers, and they think it's great, and they think it's great for his fellow classmates and whatever. And if we can start that way and try and get it back again, and I tried to play hurling for years with our local club and that was one thing that when I look back on it now, I often say, God, if it wasn't for that, you know, who would have known me at all? And it was all them lads, you know, when I went and asked them, did you ever think I had depression? And they said, not when we were young, but when we hit our 20s, we all thought it. And, you know, it's how do you approach somebody and walk up to him and say, friend, geez, I think you could have a bit of depression there, because some fella could take that the wrong way,
yes, of course,
or the right way. But I personally think it's worth the chance anyway, because there could be somebody eating themselves up there in the background every day of the week, and it affects you everywhere. It affects your work, it affects home life. You know, it's hard to hold down relationships or marriages. Or
of course, and you know, when you and I first started to chat, it was all about the drugs issue, as you say, in Rossgrave. But with that backdrop, particularly where young people are concerned, that puts a whole other dynamic on it then, doesn't it?
Well, it does, yeah. And what I find about it is, you know, if anybody, it doesn't matter whether they're young or middle age in life or anything, when they come up first, they talk about the weather and they talk about everything. And we all hear this thing about women are great, the way they talk and everything, but they're great to talk about EastEnders and such a dress down in the window. But I find with the fellas, once they come up and get anyway comfortable after the first session, you know, they nearly tell you how much they're in the bank the next time.
They'll talk away.
And it's typical, and I would be the same of a fella, that I think they adopt the attitude that, which look, the more we can talk about this, the less sessions they'll have to go to. And for some people, they might only need to come 10 or 15 times. And I have a girl there at the moment there, and she's hitting now 2 years. And I said to her, maybe, you know, every second week would be enough. And she said, no, it's not enough.
Yeah.
You know, so
she knows what she
needs
knows herself.
But like she came from having a habit of 700 euros a week, to spending that. Now she was on a cruise last year, and you know,
so she's turned her life around.
Yeah, well, like she was 29 and she had never worked a day in her life, and you know.
God. It's amazing. If people listening, particularly around the Rossgrave, if they want to talk to you, are you full up, or would you find time for people, or how does that work there?
Well, I generally, at the moment now, I'm fairly full because, like everybody else, I have to work as well.
Yeah.
And but what I do is, if someone, you know, moves on and happy enough to move on, I'll take on somebody else again.
Okay.
Because I do hour sessions with people, and I do 20 hours a week, and sometimes.
So you have a kind of a waiting list, do you, for people?
A waiting list, yeah. But now they wouldn't be all from Rossgrave either. A person that comes up from Bandon down in Cork, and you know, and look, if I can help one or two people and somebody else can help one or two more, that's where we're trying to get to.
Wouldn't that be great indeed? Derek, lovely to see you. I hope we'll talk again soon. But thanks very much indeed for coming into us today. That's Derek Russell speaking to us. We'll take a break, back with more.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're welcome back to Tipp Today. Now, one of my favourite artists, Mary Coughlin, is appearing at the Source Arts Centre in Thurles on Saturday, April the 18th. And I'm glad to say she joins me online. Good morning to you, Mary.
Good morning, how are you? And are you joking me?
I'm not joking you in the least. Tell me this, Mary, because I'm with your career right from the very start. I can't believe it's 40 years, though.
Not 43 years.
Is it 43? Wow.
I know, yeah. God, can you imagine it?
And tired and emotional, of course, the first album that had us all applauding you and thinking you were the best thing since sliced bread.
Well, there's been 17, I think there's 16 or 17 other albums since then, but that was the one that, definitely put us on the map. But I'm quite sure that most of the others are even better. If I was to pick one myself, I'd pick The House of Ill Repute or either of the last two albums I've done.
Well,
so,
it's all been great music, and I mean, largely down to great songwriters, Mary, and some of them Irish songwriters as well.
I suppose, a couple of songs there. Obviously, Ancient Rain, Jimmy McCarthy wrote, and Ride On I recorded after Christie. But John Mulhern would have written The Magdalen Laundry and a great number of songs for me over the years. And in the past several years, since 2011, I've been writing my own, and with Pete Lannister as well, with Eric as well, Eric Visser, who is sadly unable to work now because he has Parkinson's disease, and all of that comes with that. He was diagnosed in 2007. But we did an album together in my house in 2011, and my son set up a little studio for us to record. And it's a beautiful album. So we wrote the album and recorded it here over a period of time in 2011. So that was unfortunately the last time we worked together.
Oh, well, what a shame that is, because he was such an important part of your musical life as well.
Oh, I know, yeah. Absolutely.
When you're writing, Mary, yourself, and I suppose you can't help but, and because you recorded such amazing music over the years, do you naturally compare what you write yourself, and is that a tough one?
I never recorded the songs that I wrote. No, I did write. I was constantly writing. I have notebooks filled with scribblings, and I just never thought that anybody wanted to listen to what I had to say. And I could always find records that other people had written far better. You know what I mean? So I recorded those songs instead. And then I met a woman in about 2003 in Australia, Christina Olsen, and she said, I know you, she said, and I know your stories, she said. And she came to Ireland in 2004 or 5. I said, I'm not leaving this house, she said, until you write 5 songs. And she didn't leave until when we wrote them together. And so there you go, and we put them, and then I sort of got a bit of confidence, But I always think everybody else is better than myself. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there you go. I suppose most people find themselves.
I know.
With those thoughts.
Yeah. We have suffered from that.
Yeah.
So, but I'm happy with the last 2 albums, the songs that I've contributed, and indeed, I did Mary Mary and The House of Ill Repute, and I've written a couple of others on the album with Eric. About 6 songs on that album.
You've also been blessed over the years with some amazing musicians. I mean, I go so far back with you. I remember Conor Barry playing guitar with you, and I think the original band. Brilliant.
I think he played anything that Eric would ask him to play. He'd play the mandolin, the banjo, the guitar. I think he even played the sitar a few times, or maybe that was Eric himself. On just a few chords on a few or whatever you'd call them, a few little sounds,
Yeah.
Conor was amazing, and then he went off to join the River Dance.
He did indeed.
And did a whole heap of them, yeah. So then, yeah. So over the years, I've had a lot of them are gone now. God love them. Gone to the big gig in the sky, but amazing. Brian Connor, Patrick, a load of them,
Yeah, some of the best of our musicians. That's for sure. Who speaking of which, who will you have with you in the Source on April 18th?
Oh, the band I've had now for 11 or 12 years.
Yeah.
Johnny Taylor. I'll have a bass player. I'm not sure. Paul Moore.
Paul Moore.
Who's been there from the beginning, and he was then with Van for many, many years. And Van is temperamental, but Paul is back with me again. I'm not sure to be this minute if he's in the Source, but he's back for the rest of the year.
Right.
And if not, Diarmuid Lally is there on the double bass, and Dominic Mullen is on drums. Jimmy Smith on the guitar.
Class.
So, great Jimmy Smith,
class.
yeah.
Absolutely wonderfully. Do you still get a kick out of it, Mary? Do you still look forward to it, I suppose is what I'm asking.
Oh,
do you?
Stop it, I'm dying for it. I have 3 gigs next week. One of them is a lovely gig in Galway for the friend of my niece Samantha, her friend Pia, needs a double lung transplant, so she has to go to England for she has cystic fibrosis. So I'm looking forward to doing that in Galway next week. And then we have a gig down in Paris on with you. And I haven't been down for years.
Well, you're going to get a fantastic welcome because your music is well loved here on Tipp FM anyway. That's for certain. Just over the, I mean, it's a boring old question, but I really have to ask you this because I'd love to know. Do you have a highlight for over the years, Mary? Was there something that stands out for you? Yeah. Was there something that stands out as being the moment, or or a moment? I suppose.
I have a few of them. One of them was I recorded, when I got sober, I recorded live in Galway. Now, I asked John, who owns the Roisin Dove at the time, I said, can I come down to a gig? And he said, you must be joking. He said, Mary, he said, we nearly had to pick you up off the floor the last time you were here. And I said, but I've been sober now for a year. And he said, I've heard that one before. And then he said, I'm going to put up a small sign behind the counter. And he rang me back about 2 days later and he said, if you can manage 8 gigs in the week, he said, we'll do 8.
Wow.
So we did 8 gigs and we brought in a desk, myself and Eric, and we recorded the entire album, the entire gig. And some of those songs I'm going to release this year at Christmas on a thing called Even More Tired and Emotional, because we found an awful lot of songs that I've never put on vinyl or CD. So we recorded, and then the other one was the Sydney Opera House. I sold out the Sydney Opera House. Now, it's the only poster I've ever kept in my life. My father used to keep all the posters in the garage. He used to have them tacked up on the wall. And God love him, he's gone now too. But he had a couple of great posters. He had those Roisin Dove ones, the Live in Galway. And I have the Sydney Opera House, myself and the band standing outside, and me pointing to Sold Out.
Isn't that incredible? Wow.
That was,
it's a boring old question, but I'm delighted I asked you now. But I mean, the Sydney Opera House.
And then Leisureland, sold out 2 nights in Leisureland when I got kind of big in 1989, That was great, All the gigs. Jeez, I love them all. I just came back from Australia and New Zealand, and I did all the big festivals, and I did 3 gigs, 2 in Christchurch and 1 in Auckland. And they were completely sold out, and the crowds went nutty, like. They just love me. I mean, a lot of them are Irish people who've been living there forever and have said that they've been listening from the very first album. And I had never done a gig in Auckland before. Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Isn't it? Just and when you talk to some of these people who would have followed your career and stuff, were you a voice for women over those years, do you think, Mary, as well?
I think so, yeah. The very first off, I was working in the Galway Family Planning Clinic illegally. Because we had a little clinic there 2 nights a week where we just give information to women. Then there was the divorce referendum, the contraception referendum, the abortion referendum, and I'd been kind of in front of them all, or on all of the, and then the big one, I suppose, really, and for the one I'm the most proud of is the Magdalene Laundry. I've been an advocate for all the women there, and I got to meet them over the years, and they invited me to the Dáil when they got their apology from Enda Kenny. And I sat beside this woman who ran away 27 miles from a laundry carrying her baby with her in her bare feet.
My God.
And I had the great honour to sit beside her. I'll never forget it. And she was just bawling, crying to get the apology after all those years,
My God, and of course they're still suffering. They still haven't been treated properly, Mary, I suppose, even after all the years. They have not.
And 2023, I did a gig out in Christchurch in New Zealand. It was a sold-out concert, and they beamed it in to the mansion in Dublin where all the women were being honoured at a dinner, the women that were left. And I sang the Magdalene Laundry, and I chatted away to them, and the whole audience stood up. It was like 600 or 700 people stood up and applauded them, and the cameras, they got to see all the people. It was another wonderful moment for them and for me,
I was
the connection is all over the world, you know what I mean?
Of course
people
it is.
Have heard the stories, and I have heard stories of the stolen children in Australia, places similar to the Magdalene Laundry that were run by different clergy, different, not just Catholic, all of them, Anglicans, Presbyterians in New Zealand. I've met people in Canada who were horribly treated by religious orders. We've all heard those stories now, but I thought Ireland was the only place. going back to the 80s. Do you know what I mean? I thought it was just us. And I won't say it's comforting to know. It's absolutely horrific to know that women were being treated like that all over the world.
Isn't it absolutely dreadful and tragic for generations of people? Can I ask you just finally, Mary, because we were chatting earlier on about age, and I was on about, when I got to a big roundy birthday, I can't stop thinking about
My big roundy is next month.
I can't stop thinking about death and sort of misery and all sorts of stuff. How are you dealing with it's not gentlemanly to speak about a lady's age, but you don't mind, Mary, I know. 69. Yeah.
I'll be 70 in May.
Will you indeed?
And I have a fear, the fears I have around it are of not being fit. So I have started walking a great amount of kilometres a day. I'm back with my weights and I'm doing gentle weight exercises. And because my 2 grandsons were born on the 23rd of twin grandsons, and I'm determined to be able to pick them up off the floor in another year or two. Because we all live here together on the Little Sugarloaf. My granddaughter is next door, and I have 6 grandchildren living within 200 feet of me here on the Sugarloaf. And it's just, I just want to be around. I brought some of them away, to New Zealand over the years, and I just started saying to myself, I have to be around between the lads in Disneyland. We went down to the airplanes in Bray yesterday, and I got up on Dumbo the elephant. And I even got on the Walter, would you believe it? There were 3 of them. And so I do have the fears that everybody has of getting older and I won't be around, because they'll get along without me. But I intend to try and stay as healthy as I can, really. Strong. I want to be strong. But I enjoy what I do so much that you know what I mean? I enjoy being away in Australia. And then I really want to come home after last week. I want to go home now, So, that kind of way. And then I want to go out again next week, you know what I mean?
Of course. Well, I hope that you're...
I'm blessed to be able to do it,
I hope that you're looking forward to coming to Tipperary, because we all can't wait to hear you. Many, many more years of wonderful music to you, Mary. As I say, I've been a fan right from the very start, and you'll get a great welcome. Thanks, Mary. Thank you. Thank you.
See you next week.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thank you, Mary. Bye-bye, That's the great Mary Cockton. Again, apologies about a bit of a delay on the line. But isn't it wonderful to hear her happy and content now? She'll bring that great show of her music to the Source Arts Centre in Thurles on Saturday, April the 18th. Tickets on sale now. I would highly recommend the gig to you. That's it from me. We're just hearing about a bad oil spillage happening, it has happened indeed, between Clonmel and Rose Green. So if you're travelling in that area, do be careful and mind yourself, won't you? We'll talk to you tomorrow. Leanne produced, and Davin is on the way with the time tunnel. Bye-bye now.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.